My daughter yelled from the garden, and I rushed outside to see what she wanted. From the way she was looking at me, I figured there must be a dead animal among my wife's daisies. Her brother stood beside her, his expression concerned and confused. Instead of something nasty, the ceramic base of my wife's favorite garden gnome sat alone on the dirt. The funny fellow with the pointy hat was gone. In his place, a sign stuck out of the decorative mound he once stood on. In angry black lettering, the sign read, "On strike." My daughter and I looked at each other in confusion. Both of us knew better than to mess with my wife's gnome. She fawned over the thing whenever she came out to tend to her plants. Did someone sneak in and vandalize us? If so, why replace our gnome with this? Whatever the case, my wife wasn't going to be happy when she came home tonight. Sure enough, she noticed the empty space next to her daisies right away, and her smile disappeared. My wife went into a panic over the missing gnome, although she said a few strange things under her breath. He's never left like this before. When will he be back? Will he be back? What about the lurkers? I could tell she was trying not to be heard, but I could hear what she was saying anyway. What was she talking about? What were lurkers? What did the gnome have to do with them? Late at night, wicked snarling in the yard awoke us. I peered out the bedroom window to see 6 shadows scampering through our yard, tearing apart the garden and smashing the fence. The vandals who stole the gnome had returned. I stormed out of the room and grabbed my son's baseball bat. My wife grabbed my arm. "No, they'll kill you." I didn't fear a bunch of 2-bit vandals. I tore open the door and charged out, screaming at the intruders that the police were coming. In hindsight, I probably should have called the cops before I ran out. Then again, they probably wouldn't have helped against what I saw in the yard. They sure weren't vandals. I froze on the bottom step, my eyes locked on the hunched figures of some inhuman creatures crawling around in the dirt. Each one had 3 eyes glowing with different colors. They turned toward me, their mouths gaping open and revealing double rows of long, pointed teeth. My heart sank as 2 of them prowled toward me. My grip on the bat loosened, and my trembling arms lowered. Sweat beaded on my brow despite the cool night air. One of the creatures suddenly lurched to the side with a guttural yelp. It fell over and drew the attention of the other 2 behind it. A glint of light shined off a metallic arrow impaled in its side. In a sudden flash, 2 more arrows sunk into the temples of the 2 other creatures, killing them. 3 more creatures came around the side of the house to inspect the carnage and were immediately attacked by a tiny assailant. My wife's garden gnome jumped onto the back of one of the creatures and plunged an arrow into the back of its head. One of the others lunged and knocked the gnome off the monster, only to receive an arrow to its neck. The creature reeled, giving the gnome room to get back on his feet and fire a kill shot into its temple. The last creature stood upright. Its arms dangled as it hunched over, green eyes gleaming at the gnome. "You lot get uglier every night," the gnome muttered as he drew his bow, the arrow glinting in the moonlight. He let it go, and the arrow shot out with a whistling sound. The creature evaded to attack and leaned forward to charge. My strength returned, and I rushed forward, bat still in hand, and took a swing at the monster's face. A loud crack echoed into the night, a mixture of the wooden bat splintering and the visceral noise from the monster's nose getting crushed by the impact. The creature reeled, clutching its face with one hand as it staggered backward. One final arrow pierced the hand and pinned it to the monster's skull. All 6 creatures lay dead on the lawn. My wife rushed out and approached the gnome. Tears welled in her eyes. "You came back. I thought you left us." The gnome removed his hat and tucked his bow and quiver inside. After placing the hat back on his head, he addressed my wife. "Hey, I couldn't stay back and let you face the lurkers on your own." I stepped closer to the pair. "Would anyone like to tell me what the hell just happened?" My wife explained that the creatures tonight were lurkers. They were responsible for attacking homes in the middle of the night, and that gnomes would protect against them. "Yeah, miss, at night," the gnome hollered. "I went on strike 'cause you left me in the sweltering summer heat. Lurkers don't come out during the day. You could have left me in a nice cool shed for the daytime. I lowered to my knees to get a better look at the gnome. It was most certainly the gnome that stood on the ceramic base. Every inch of its form matched the ceramic material, and the colors appeared painted on. Even so, it moved and bent like skin and fabric as the gnome addressed my wife with its angry tone. Also, can you stop fawning over me every time you prune the bushes? I ain't no gardening deity. It put its hands on its sides. It honestly makes me uncomfortable. The gnome turned to me next. As for ye, thanks for the assist back there. Didn't need it, but I appreciate it. The following morning, I followed my wife outside to find the gnome back in its rightful place in the garden. It stood in its usual pose, leaning against a trowel with a proud expression, as if he'd tended to the whole garden himself. Last night couldn't have actually happened, right? I shook my head and dismissed the thought. My wife picked up the gnome and brought him to the shady shed in the backyard. As we turned to leave him in there, I could swear I saw him wink before the shed door closed.